Good afternoon, everybody. And I'd like to call the Radical Work Session to order at 6 p.m. for the City of Pflugerville. Our first celebrity is our Finance Director, Item 2A, presentation regarding the Pflugerville Community Development Corporation, FY25 Q2 financial report. Tell us how much money we got.
Yes, good evening, Mayor, Council, Deputy City Manager Harshwan. Yes, so total revenue is 45% of the budget. So we're 6 months in, so that's pretty good. Sales tax is at 49%. So interest income is coming in a little bit below what we budgeted, and that's not surprising at this point. Other revenue is our lease payments, and that'll come in the fourth quarter. The expenditure is 17% of budget, but this does include some big buckets. Development incentives are paid out in the fourth quarter. Capital projects will start up, and we'll see a lot more expenditures in the third and fourth quarter for those as well. And then debt payments are also in the fourth quarter. Just a quick sales tax chart, kind of how we're doing compared to 23 and 24. Can take any questions if you have them.
I had a question on the expenses.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it was on the financial report in the packet. In the operating expenses, there was the one-time bond issuance costs, but when you took that out, then the budget was only 30%, or actual was only 30% of budget when we're halfway through, so you expect to be closer to 50%. Can you explain the areas that are under budget and why?
I couldn't address the why, but I can certainly tell you other professional services is below budget, and that's kind of a bigger part of the budget. Recruitment is also below budget, and
that's business recruitment or personnel recruitment?
It's business recruitment.
Okay.
And standards. And then there was another one I responded to you today with workforce development.
Well, wouldn't you
Was also
imagine
below.
that some of that under expense is because of
Turnover and
the
transition of
transition
leadership.
and so forth? And because
Yeah.
I'm not going to say we got a late start, but it's gradually
Yeah.
was moving a little slower than we thought. So.
Right, and those are the bigger buckets that had larger budget amounts.
Right.
And so if they run below 50%, it's going to pull the total down.
Right.
And then the personnel was lower, obviously, because of some of the vacancies.
Yes.
Are most, except for like the new announcement, are all the positions filled now, or are there still vacancies?
No, there's still vacancies.
Okay, how many out of, like, what percentage?
Probably 80%.
I know
I don't know.
for sure there's one, and there's about to be another one.
Okay. So,
There's one currently vacant, and then Crystal is vacating a second.
Yeah.
okay.
Yep.
And we're currently
We have
recruiting
5.
for those?
Yeah. Well, currently yes, currently recruiting.
Yeah, so I'll just make the comment that we've had not turnover, but transition because of
Right.
people leaving for other career opportunities. So that's kind of leaving us somewhat shorthanded at this point, but our executive director is on top of it.
Great. Thank you.
You're welcome. Anything else?
Well, thank you.
You're welcome.
That was 4 minutes, Tracy. That's great.
Good job. David won't keep you out here this time.
All right, our next item is a discussion regarding the Pflugerville Old Town Park Master Plan. Shane, I bet you got a really knock it out of the park presentation.
Good pun.
So you brought your whole team?
Yeah, we're trying to flank y'all, one for one almost. Good evening, how are y'all?
Good.
Good.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, Deputy City Manager Harshwan, my business hero. How's everyone doing today?
Absolutely wonderful.
We're here to talk about the Old Town Park Master Plan. I'm gonna just kick us off, get us started, and then Jeff and the team will take over. I'm just here to talk about how we got here. We have a steering committee made up of the Planning and Zoning Commission and the Parks and Rec Commission. Met 4 times over the course of the fall, winter with that steering committee and our design team. Some of the steering committee goals were an enduring, innovative master plan that was reflective of our culture, a vibrant, inclusive transformation of that original city center that predates even
The mayor.
even the mayor, and the ratification of our city. Non-traditional park design that highlights the Trail Capital of Texas mindset, and then a flexible plan that can be phased over time as funding grows. We did a lunch and learn with 4 y'all in February. We're here tonight for the work session. We'll get any feedback that we get tonight, and then ultimately go to Planning and Zoning, or Parks and Rec Commission, Planning and Zoning, and then back to y'all for approval late May or June. And obviously, we're talking about the water tower. This came from a quote from Facebook, but it's the water tower represents who we are and where we come from. Like I said, it was here before the city was officially a city, and it's something that served that community for a long time. And we're trying to really envision what 2.0 for that water tower looks like now that it's not providing a water source necessarily or a life-sustaining thing for the city in that city center in general. What is its mission 2.0, which is what this amazing team is here to talk to you about tonight. So I'm gonna let Jeff talk about the public engagement process and ultimately introduce our team.
Yeah, so kind of talking about that history a little bit more, this is something that's incredibly important to people as a landmark, but not necessarily as a place. And so that was the whole goal here, is to try to re-envision what this space can be, have that placemaking opportunity for the community. And to do that, we had to engage the public and make sure that we're on the right track and seeing what they wanted out of this. And in keeping with City of Pflugerville tradition now, our public engagement process was pretty robust. And to start things off, if you saw us out at any of our events or any of our engagement, we made a mini water tower for this, which is in that photo there. And it was absolutely the draw to our table. Deutschenfest, Rock the Block, we had people walking up to take photos with that. And then they got curious about what we were doing there. We did have some offers to purchase that water tower, so we'll auction that off after this is over.
So what do you got to think from council?
That's right, yeah. And again, that was a really fun thing for our staff. Our park operations team put that together with an old barbecue grill. Did a great job.
So the water tower is a barbecue grill?
The water tower is a barbecue
One of the
grill.
two in
I think
that
the
photo.
old one was as well, yeah. It's originally a repurposed barbecue grill.
Weber.
So we did an event engagement, which we had done with our master planning process for the department to a lot of success. And so we figured we would replicate that here for this project. So we had a table at Rock the Block over the summer. We had a Tool cover band for that Rock the Block, and so it was a pretty fun clientele to engage. It was pretty young, which was great, the folks we were talking to. And I do want to say, too, in all of our engagement, I was there for Deutschenfest and I was there for Rock the Block, and every single person that I talked to, and this is not most people, every single person that I talked to they lived in Pflugerville. That's not to say every person that engaged with this process lived in Pflugerville, but for me, we were engaging a lot of Pflugerville community members on this project. So Rock the Block, we probably had about 100 people engage with us at that event. Deutschenfest, we were there on Saturday for about 7 hours, had several hundred people engage with us. And our design team did a fantastic job, and I'll talk about them a little bit and introduce them here shortly. In creating ways for them to engage with this process. And there was multiple boards, and they got to really give their input on every facet of this project. But probably the most important thing that we did throughout this engagement process was we had on-site neighborhood engagement. So within a several block radius, we put door hangers a couple weeks out from this event to make sure that the neighborhood actually knew that this was happening. We got them out. That door hanger also had a QR code for the survey that went out, so that if they weren't able to make it that night that we were out there, they were still able to engage in this process. We had an in-park public engagement exercise, which also had snow cones. So we wanted people to come out, spend some time with us, not just come and talk for a couple minutes and leave. We really wanted to engage this conversation. We had some good conversations. We had some folks who had heard through the grapevine about this project and had their worries. And I hope we were able to talk them through what we were actually looking at doing. And we were trying to create a place not just for the entire community, but for them as well. I think we got that point across. Because we had snow cones, we even had some kids come out and engage with the process, not with their parents, teenagers, which are always hard to get out, but apparently snow cones will do it if it's right outside of their house. And so that was really fun. We were able to talk to them and kind of see what they wanted. What?
Free, if it's
It was free.
Yes.
They were free. Yeah,
Free
we're not
snow
charging them. We also had an online survey that was open for about 2 months during this process. We had 120 responses through that. But during our Parks, Recreation, and Open Space Master Plan, we started measuring touch points. And we had about 30,000 touch points for that. We had over 1,200 touch points for this process, which we're, master planning 1 acre. This is a 1 acre property. So we're pretty proud of that. There was a lot of engagement that folks had with this process. One of the things that we did was we allowed them to give feedback on park design options. So I think it's really good in a process like this to not just talk abstract, but to actually talk on what we're thinking about here. So we've said multiple times that we want this to be kind of transformative and innovative space, not just a playground replacement. Or we didn't want them to think about it that way. We wanted them to think about this a little outside the box. So our design team provided them with several examples that are local, that people may be familiar with, have visited, have seen, that are, again, not just a typical run-of-the-mill playground that you might see at a lot of parks across every city in the country. 3 of those that we discussed with the public were Kingsbury Commons at Peace Park, which a lot of people are familiar with, especially in the Austin area. It's an iconic landmark for Austin. And then Alliance Children's Garden, which families across Austin will travel, 40 minutes to visit. That's an incredible place. I'll take my son there and have to peel him away from that place every time I go. And then Skyline Park at Easton Park, which is a newer development in Southeast Austin. And what was really special about this and why our design team was able to speak to this so well was Alliance Children's Garden and Skyline Park were both designed by TBG, who we have on this project. And so they were able to talk about these projects in depth with folks. With that being said, a lot of folks were really drawn to Kingsbury Commons. And you'll notice we're working on a 1 acre piece of property, Kingsbury Commons. Peace Park that area is about 13 acres, but what we were really focused on was kind of what's in the programmatic area of that park, which is where that globe sphere kind of relaxation space is, where their water play is, where their play features are, and that's around 1 acre. And we saw people engage with all 3 of these. They really liked all 3 of these, but they have a special affinity for Kingsbury Commons. And we really think that we can create something similar to that through this process. So those are the common design elements that people saw in Kingsbury Commons that they wanted to replicate in this project. One of the important things to note on this project is that there is a street that bisects these 2 parcels. And so we wanted to make sure that we were engaging with folks about what they would like to see with that street. Whether it's just enhancing the pedestrian crossing or actually incorporating that into the project and closing that street off. Most people said they wanted to close that street off and increase the amount of acreage that's in this already pretty small piece of property. And that's all well and good if it's people across the city saying that, but that was the same thing we heard at the on-site engagement as well. So that neighborhood's the older neighborhood. It's built on a grid, so it wouldn't create a traffic hindrance that much. And we heard from folks that live directly adjacent to this park. They felt the same way. They thought that this place was going to be something special, that it really needed that connection between these 2 parcels. And so that's going to be incorporated into the design. You'll see that here shortly. So some of the feedback from surveys, I'm not going to cover all this information, but I wanted you to see some important info. That green and blue circle there is how far do you live from the park. And so 29% of the respondents lived less than a half mile from the park. So we saw a pretty good portion. That basically means they live in that neighborhood or adjacent to that neighborhood. But about 44% live within a mile. So almost half of the respondents to this survey lived within a mile of this park. And then almost all, 87% live within 5 miles. So we really saw, again, going back to the engagement in person, we were engaging with Pflugerville community members. The folks who responded to this survey also are Pflugerville community members. And a lot of them are really close to this park. Yes, sir.
If you live in Pflugerville and you're more than 5 miles from that park,
Where are you?
Yeah, maybe that might be the small portion that aren't in Pflugerville. But
Steve's
Again.
Crossing.
Yeah.
could be north. Yeah, could be northeast.
Some
The
Black
Verona,
Hawk,
I don't know.
Yeah.
depending on traffic, Falcon Point.
Falcon Point gets further away depending on traffic.
Yep.
Yeah, this could be their reference. They might think they're more than 5 miles, but they're really not. The participant age range, we really got a good range of ages. We had a lot of over 55 because that neighborhood currently is a lot of folks that are in that age range. But we got a lot of young families that engaged in this process. But one other thing to note is how often do you visit the park? And there's a lot of people that live really close to that park, but still 37% said they never visit that park. And we'll talk about that again shortly. So throughout that process, we gave them, we tried to have the kind of real world examples, but we also talked pretty big picture with them about what sort of abstract ideas do you want to see in this park. And this will come as a surprise to nobody in Pflugerville, but what the 4 top things they wanted to see are play elements, shade structures, which are obviously incredibly important to our community members at this point, places that cool, and trail connections. So shade and trail, we kind of figured those would be in here. But play elements and places that cool were really important to people as well. And then this is some additional feedback from the surveys. What do you want to do at Old Town Park? We saw a lot of we want to relax and we want to play. So both of those sort of ideas are really incorporated into this concept. And then one of the more interesting things we talked about throughout this process was how can the existing water tower be reimagined? And we gave some pretty outlandish ideas in certain cases, but we also gave just some maybe more artistic ideas. And we heard pretty overwhelmingly we want the water tower to stay as it is. And you'll notice what got second on this is a light installation. So we're at least ahead of the curve on that because that thing is already lit. So I think people are pretty happy with how that turned out, and they want to see it. They want to see the water tower itself look like it does now.
Did anybody reimagine it being moved somewhere else?
Yeah, we did have some people talk about moving it.
We did. Yep.
Okay.
No ideas on where to move it, but just the idea of maybe moving it.
Well, I have some.
We'll send you the link.
So before I kick it over to our design team, I did want to say, Old Town Park itself, just you saw it in that survey response. It doesn't get a lot of love. We even had some respondents at our on-site engagement that said they live right next door to this park and they go to Moose Park, which is a 10-minute, 20-minute walk from where they live. And so we definitely need to do something there to re-engage that community, and it's a really important community, Pflugerville. And so we think that this is a great way to engage it. And so I'll kick it over to Jody, Megan, and Craig. So Jody and Megan are with TBG Partners, which is the landscape architecture firm that we've been working with on this project for the last several months. And then Craig is with BRS Architecture, and you've probably heard from Craig at some point before because he's also on our Recreation Center design team as well. And so we've got an all-star team. Like I said, there's some incredible projects in the Austin area that have been designed by this team. I think you probably couldn't find a better team in the United States than what we've put together for this 1 acre in Pflugerville. So we're very excited.
Can you put that on Google?
Well, thanks, Jeff. And thanks for taking the time to listen to this master plan presentation. As Jeff mentioned, the design team was inspired by, and the steering committee that we work with were inspired by parks that had fun and interesting, both active and passive elements. It was important that we had a balance there. But honestly, the major inspiration for this master plan came from the water tower itself. There's a story to be told there. I mean, not only is it such a vertical element, but it's a very interesting story about water. And so, in addition to creating fun spaces where people can play and gather, we've overlaid an educational element to this master plan that helps celebrate and educate people about the importance of water in Pflugerville's history, its development, and its future. And so, in addition to what you're going to see, the way to think about it is each of these spaces are designed so that you can have it fosters learning and awareness about the significance of waters, but we're doing it in an immersive way. So just to give you a preview, here's an overview of the master plan. And if you go from right to left, there are 3 major areas. The first is about access. Where does the water come from, right? It's the Colorado River, it's Lake Pflugerville. And then how does the water get from there to a place where you can use it? So it's all about the transport, the distribution. That's where the water tower starts to help people understand not only what it is, but how it works. And then finally, we bring in a bit of sustainability and conservation about what do you do to be good stewards of water? How do we collect it? How do we filter it? And how do we put it back into the water system?
Perfect. Taking that same overlay, we really wanted to define the user experience and how they could see themselves in the space, transcending from active to passive spaces, so that there's a nice transition period. We're not having people try to sit and relax next to where a large amount of people would congregate, or there would be loud activities with children playing. So our social activities really hinge on the right side of the park with a pavilion and a large lawn. And as they transcend through playing and explorative play, the resting spot becomes part of the water tower itself. And then really the passive part becomes the discovery area where the rain gardens occur, as well as a few resting points on the left side of the project. So really creating a transect for socialization. We're going to walk through a series of diagrams that show how we built the park up with the different program items we heard through community engagement. So this is the final graphic, but we're going to take it all back to kind of what would we consider the iconic features of the site itself. The water tower is the big red focal point feature in the middle of the site. And to create a balance, we wanted to bring new structures on each portion of it. I don't know what word I was trying to say there. So on the left side, new structures that would be more focused for smaller group sitting areas to provide shade for a wine night for a couple, a small gathering, a mother-son moment. And then on the right side would be the larger pavilion with restroom structures where a movie night could occur, or a local band or a festival could spill out and have shade pieces. So trying to provide anchors, but not sit them next to the water tower so we can keep those long distance views to it. Ooh, here we go. Overlaying on that is our circulation and connectivity diagram. So looking at where we want sidewalks along streets that don't currently exist, especially along South 2nd Street. And then it is the trail capital of the world, so what would be best but a long meandering path that leads you through all of these different exploration zones. He bows out at the water tower, still recognizing the water tower itself and giving room to breathe, and then crosses over Hoops Avenue that you'll see in all these diagrams has now been taken over and given back to those park spaces. And then a few series of other experiential pathways or secondary pathways that help lead between some of the larger program items. The program items show in some bubble diagrams in some spaces. So going again from left to right, the 3 small seating nodes that occur under the shade structure itself. And then really the 2 dots that hinge on the beginning of the trail and they head up towards the water tower itself. We pulled the play, multi-generational play, to really be adjacent to the water tower itself to really help activate that middle core of the park, not putting it on each end. And it transcends and dives into the water feature splash pad area that then takes it and ends towards the pavilion. So trying to pull and spread these pieces out across the site and not all put them in one area. The Softscape program becomes everything else in between those zones. We did provide a large evergreen buffer along the homes that back to this park space. We do want to recognize that maybe not everyone appreciates the sounds and noises. So creating those program items and pulling them off of that back fence line so that people don't feel like others are right up on them. And then the light green areas are all the lawn spaces, all of different sizes. So you can activate with larger groups or smaller groups, but still keep this park open and festive. Oh, here we go again.
How high are those berms planned to be?
The berms, we haven't gotten into detail grading, but honestly, 6 to 8 feet. I think the evergreen shrubs, the buffer, I would make those so that they're the 10, 12 foot to really help block it. We know we're elevating people up on that pathway, so we don't want the looky-loos over people's backyards. And then when you pull those all together, the framework starts to step up, and this looks like colored bubble plans. So we have a series of other graphics that show it in more realistic nature and can walk you through the spaces.
So this is the fully rendered plan right here. As Craig was articulating from the right side, and Jody as well, the more active spaces, so you have the pavilion on the right. As you keep moving to the left of the page here, you have the active lawn. You can see here parallel parking spaces all along the street for all the folks that would come to visit. And then finally, the other lawn space, and that's where we also would envision rain gardens, reclaiming water throughout the space. But through here, you'll see the meandering pathway, and we have additional diagrams that would show how that pathway meanders both from the ground level plane, gets folks up above at a different elevation, and then has integrated play throughout the entirety of the park here.
If we go with this, I would just possibly suggest that making Second Street a one-way. I don't know, it just looks cluttered if it's two-way. What do you think?
I think it's a pretty wide right-of-way. Do you know what the right-of-way is there?
It's very wide. It's
We have a road diagram.
We have a road section that's later on at the very end, so that right now it's that full pavement width, but we want to create bump outs so they become protected parking spaces. And by giving it a little bit of that road diet, we start to pull the parking out of the park space as well. We don't want to lose available programming area for parking. We wanted to use the large street width that was already there.
I just wanted to avoid that where, you know, you have to wait for the car to pass for you to come out.
Pull in.
It gets really cluttered, especially if we have some kind of event out there. So.
We can make a note. Yeah.
Do we feel like this is what is it, 1.3 acres roughly?
Yeah, just under that, I believe.
yeah,
Okay.
it's just under.
Do we need that much parking? Doesn't it feel like a regional park that's going to have necessarily the draw that would require that much parking?
I guess it depends on whether our goal is to make it regional or just residential kind of pocket park.
I think with the pavilion, it'll potentially host events, whether it's a birthday party or a baby shower or whatever, a family
Wedding.
event.
or wedding.
Yeah. Yeah.
But what's the, I mean, we're way early in the process. Do we have an anticipated capacity for that pavilion?
I haven't necessarily looked at capacity.
We have not looked at capacity of it, and there's about 17 spots there. And I think it's just more convenient spots than actual like parking spots for that regional draw. I think of the like mom who wants to do the picnic with her kids, and it's easier to put them in the car to drive there type of thing.
Well, I think part of it will be what the play elements are, and
Yeah.
I think that'll be a big draw.
So if we keep going, we'll get into
Let's go.
Let's do it. So this is the existing site right here. So your question of what the size is, it's closer to an acre. And again, right here you'll see 2nd Street. We'll get further along down the road, pun intended, and show that road diet and how wide that road actually is. You can see the existing playground here that's about 20 years old. I believe 18 other playgrounds have been replaced in advance of this playground here. There is shade, which is fantastic, but not a lot of folks play on this playground just because of how outdated it is. And so in those survey responses, folks who even live within a half a mile have never even visited this park or didn't even realize it was a park. Even the parcel with the water tower, folks didn't realize that was a part of the park.
Well, it's also a 2 to 5 year old playscape, so it's very limited in the use.
Absolutely.
So, I mean, I think that's probably the major reason is maybe there's not as many people with that kids in that age group.
I think partly, I will say anecdotally, this is just one person, but the family we talked to that said they went to Moose Park, she had a 4-year-old with her. And so even then, she took her 4-year-old to Moose Park.
Well,
instead
Moose
of the
Park
one
has
2
swings and has a lot
It's
more
great.
things
Right.
to do.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think
Variety.
she lived
She lived in that house, right?
in walking distance, which was so unfortunate that, instead of having a nicer park here that she could more easily access with her children, chooses to get in the car. So there's such a great opportunity for folks that live in this neighborhood here. So here's that bird's eye view that I think helps to articulate some of the questions that were raised. The road diet, we'll get to that. But our pathway and the meandering pathway to get folks both interacted with the water tower, which was one of our goals, also articulating and telling the story of water, helps to do that as we interact with different elevations, artwork with the water tower, and allowing folks to meander through this space. Additionally, it provides essentially more acreage to the park as you're getting folks up to a different elevation while there's additional activities and engagement that can happen underneath the boardwalk as shown.
And I think that the picture answers my question, but I would just want to verify that meandering parkway there is ADA compliant.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yes.
That's a standard moving forward
Yeah. Yes.
because the law requires it to.
Yes. And so keep going, you'll see the artwork integrated with the water tower. Again, not a detailed design, but a great opportunity for folks in the city of Pflugerville to engage with the water tower, to continue to articulate and enforce that this is an iconic structure to the citizens of Pflugerville. Here's another great image here, articulating your question. You can see someone here in a wheelchair. This would be compliant to code. Certainly there is a staircase, but we would comply with all ADA requirements for play here. You'll see this cargo net. Again, we're designing for multi-generational play, not just kids, not just folks and little children who are 2 to 5 years in age, but that older demographic that lives in the neighborhood, and then future generations that are moving to Pflugerville or want to be drawn to this park. You see that there are swings here again, adding value and play value to different spaces and different elevations where possible. So those swings would be attached and affixed to the underside of the walkway here. The cargo netting, again, can be used from above and below, and then additional play features down below as well. Here's a great shot from under the bridge, articulating and showing those swings. Again, not just for kids, but for adults as well. Adults love to play. And then additionally, you can see lighting underneath, different artwork illuminating in this daytime shot, and we'll get to some nighttime shots here as well. But opportunities for play all over this structure. And here's that nighttime shot.
Nice.
This would coincide with the lighting of the tower, but also providing safe ambiance for events either after hours, if so desired, but additionally ensuring that it's safe for folks in the neighborhood and not having folks camping out.
And you'll notice, and we're providing a series of different places to seat, some benches with backs, some walls that are built in, some movable tables and chairs, maybe under the pavilion, just as we know people like to experience and sit and congregate in many different means.
You'll see the view from the shade structure looking back at the water tower, and then in the foreground here, the middle foreground to the right, the water feature here as well. You'll see what looks like a guitarist here right off of the table, so opportunities for folks to bring in a band.
Elvis impersonators.
Yes, exactly. Have events, and so that's where those parking spots come into play, or even a smaller birthday party. This is just a wholesome, right-sized park for a child or even an adult to have a birthday party here and hang out. Here's another bird's eye view. Again, you can see the parallel parking spaces. Again, a great opportunity for the snow cones, getting those teenagers outside, getting that vitamin D here at the park. And then, again, the water feature meandering through just immediately adjacent to the bridge structure. And then that nighttime shot as well. Here is a great street view. Again, the road right now is, don't have the dimension off the top of my head, but if you look in Google Earth or if you go out to the site, there is no centerline striping. That road needs to be restriped. It is wide enough to have two-way street and parallel parking there. So right now it is almost a highway for cars. Having a road diet and reducing that down, having the parallel parking spaces would help reduce the speed as folks go through this neighborhood. When we were out there for all the events, it was not a high traffic street whatsoever. And I think other folks were super interested in closing the street down as because it's on the grid. If it looks busy, you can just go around the block, no big deal. And here's that bird's eye aerial again. And here it is, dimensions. Just like we planned it.
There we go, right at the end.
So here's that road diet. Reducing that down again to have that parallel parking, that 22-foot travel lane. So right now, the road's even wider than that for two ways of traffic.
I would never have guessed that.
But
It's huge.
but with that concept, with the parallel dedicated on one side, would the other side of the street need to be modified to no parking?
No parking.
That would,
Yeah.
yep.
Yes.
Which would front residential too. They would that'd be their preference.
They would appreciate that.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, I know quite a few folks do parallel park on that side of the street currently.
I don't know why you're
outside their houses.
Well, in the video you showed, there was a rusty white van on that side of the street.
Yeah, exactly.
Parked right there. Yeah.
Exactly.
So where would their guests park if there was no parking on the side in front of their house?
I guess they would have hoops avenue, for example.
Same with parallel spots.
Yeah, same way it is in
They
They would
Highland
have
Park.
these
Parallel.
spots as well.
Remember years ago when we took that from Highland Park and somebody had asked the same
Highland Park,
question? Yeah, and
Remember?
yeah,
Brad Marshall was on it.
yeah, and we literally, it's been fun.
And this just shows how it connects back to the trail system itself, how it could be a connection point to the trail system.
Yeah, and that's a really important aspect of the project. Obviously, the concept for this is mostly within those park boundaries, but we wanted to make sure that this connected to what is currently downtown and what will be downtown east. And there's not a lot of walkways, so folks, when we were out there that night, when they're walking their dog or whatever, they're on the street. And so this would also be an opportunity to expand, connectivity from this space out and then just generally in that neighborhood. giving them other opportunities for.
Especially as we see
Walk-in.
development happens around Pecan.
Can you do me a favor, go back several slides to one of the bird's eye views of more of the layout, maybe the bubble map, I think it was.
Oh, the bubble plan? Sure.
Perhaps somewhere in that area. Sorry to take you back so far.
Oh, no,
but
you're fine. Now that I know how to work this, we're totally fine.
There you go. There's another one on the other.
Yeah, it's all right. I just
that was
See, that gets
So,
because there's
so this is a great one because I'm seeing some different things in different renderings, and I'm curious when we decommission and abandon hoops through there. Why are we aligning the decommissioning with this smaller parcel? Why aren't we taking the larger parcel all the way across hoops and decommissioning another 20 feet of pavement?
all the way up Plain
Not
North.
necessarily all the way up, but just to align with the northern portion.
Oh,
So why
I
not-
think we
why not?
could. Yeah, I don't think we.
So I think
really
in
thought
some
about that,
renderings, I
just
kind of see it
stopped
up there, and some I see it here. So I'm just trying
Yeah.
to make sure we've got alignment on.
We could totally take it from the one that's bumped up further back and down. I think safely we just were like, oh gosh, we're closing a road. Maybe we need to be a little more conservative to do so.
Let me hear your thoughts on that.
I don't think there's any implications to driveways or anything if we take it across. I think it's better to
Yeah.
enlarge in
gonna
the
close
park
the road,
and
you might as
reduce
well.
the pavement.
Take as much as you can if it doesn't impede.
It doesn't affect that home. That's
That
a side
home?
lot condition on Hoops, and then the one that fronts is the one on the plan right side.
I think when we were
Address off of
brainstorming,
it.
we were just trying to maybe, knowing that some people may park on that side, just get them further away from that residential spot. If you go closer to their property, you're almost forcing people to park right on there
In front of them.
in front of them. But
Are we expecting to have parking on that section?
no, not parking. We're not highlighting parking over there, but I do think people.
I mean,
would park.
personally, I would also think we might want to abandon the entirety of that section and just provide it to the homeowner as their driveway and allow them to
Yeah.
incorporate it into their lot. So we get a little more pavement off of our.
So that doesn't
off of our list.
incorporate an alley anywhere, does it?
No.
There wasn't an alley there.
There
was an
is
alley.
there is,
There's
so
an
the
easement.
alleyway that's on the right side, he extends up, but he's not a paved alleyway. He is just lawn right
Right,
now.
right.
And so we are using that as some of the buffer.
Buffer,
So we
okay.
would like to plant evergreen shrubs and trees just for the home that does back on that side of it.
Just to make sure for voice purposes. Yeah, I mean, you're just like you said, you're forcing traffic or forcing parking, as you said, or
Potentially.
or suggesting parking based on the design to go over there. I don't necessarily know that's a bad thing, but I also understand where Doug's coming from about if you're going to take it, why not?
That
Would love
extra
to.
chunk.
Yeah.
Yeah, take the extra
Makes sense.
chunk, maybe abandon more of hoops, maybe provide a trail access connection there.
Yep.
You've got the pink arrow going to the street.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's
I mean, it shows that.
let's maybe take that up to the cross street instead of into the street.
Okay. You have a good eye for detail.
Just trying to
Check
give
that.
you-
I mean, man,
Giving you more to work with. That's-
love it.
I like it.
Awesome.
So we are gonna get up to 1.3 acres for sure.
That's, I swear I told
Making
the
it
truth.
0.3. There you go.
Yeah.
So we'll work with the design team, and then we'll take those recommendations to parks and planning and zoning.
All right, I got one other crazy question for you. I think Shane, this is probably more for you. Looking at the scope of this park, I'm going to say it does not necessarily look inexpensive.
No.
What's our plan? Is this something that goes into CIP? Is
Yeah.
this something that goes to GO, or is this something that we're looking to fund through developer contributions and other sources?
So I think it's been tough to project right now. There's been some tariff and other implications that are making what we'd project to be higher than we, would love to see. I think right now, you could see this at full build out, potentially over $5 million, but there would also be some bearing of lines that we would use a different funding source for that. Some road fees, some sidewalk fees from bearing of lines. We have this on the CIP. Once we have parking and a restroom, it potentially would qualify for parking lot dedication funds, which would open it up to some funding. And we believe this will be a phased build out.
How many?
Yeah, that was my question as well.
I think 2 to 3 is what we've talked about, depending on how big of a first phase is funded.
The reason I asked is because we just had a lunch and learn about, we got some preliminary results from our citizens who were talking about us pushing forward. How do you uniquely identify Pflugerville? What makes people not just want to live here,
Sure.
but actually want to stay here? And I think something like this is unique, attracts, marries what our past is with our future, accents in a lot of ways what we're trying to do moving forward in the city. And I think it's a great idea. The question is that if you're going to take a big brush, like you said, based on phasing,
Sure.
Okay, which part who's on first?
I think if you
exactly on that.
I think if you came back to y'all's discussion when you were talking about 1849 8 or 10 years ago, I think that'd have been a $30 or $40 million project at full build out. Luckily today, I'm only asking you to approve a conceptual plan, that can be phased and not all that
Yeah,
at
but
once.
then that locks us into a budget.
Right. Well, I don't want, in a conceptual and a master plan, I don't want budget to be the only thing, because it can be value
And
engineered.
let's be clear, it doesn't necessarily lock us in, because I was on that committee a decade ago. When did
Sure.
we do 1849?
Yeah,
Maybe 2014 or something like that.
2014,
Yeah,
2016
with
was when
Verner
you
Jean and
purchased,
everybody.
2018 when you opened.
And it's still, we changed where the baseball fields are,
Yeah.
and some other designs where parking was even further down.
So we're not at 40 million today.
Yeah.
But I think it's closer to 24
So
or
it
whatever.
doesn't
But
necessarily
it's-
mean that-
at full build out, you still have some.
Yeah.
So, $5 million is a lot for,
It
just
is.
a pocket park if it's only serving the residents. So, because the question was asked, is this a regional? Are we trying to draw regionally? I think, so at that price point, and if we're trying to make something unique, I think that lends itself more to a regional park. So I think if we're going to do that, that's different considerations than just keeping it for the neighborhood. And so parking and other things like that and connectivity so that a neighborhood isn't overwhelmed with parking and people want to go. I think we have to consider that.
So the parking and the restrooms is what elevates it in our lexicon. When we talk about when we phase things out as a regional park, is one, any of our regional parks have a restroom and parking lot. That's how we're using the parking lot dedication funds for it. And so it would definitely be a regional park if the first phase included the parking and the restrooms for sure. And I do think it'll be a space that schools and camps and others will use with the splash pad component, with the elements of play around it, with some of the educational components that you'll see as well. So I do think it would be a destination play. It'd obviously be on the smaller end of a destination play, but I think it's right sized for that community. It's what that community has grown around, and it's maximizing the space obviously with an acre. So we're obviously elevating and doing things underneath. So we're stacking as much as we can. But
Well, I mean, and overall, I thought that the whole concept of planning and imagining what was there was based around the water tower as the focal feature, and I think this enhances that particular focal feature, even though everybody knows where the water tower is. I'm sure there's some folks that don't.
right.
But
Mayor, I agree with you completely. I think that this puts the water tower in a completely different perspective with folks right there.
I definitely wouldn't call it a pocket park. I
No,
think
yeah.
I think it's a very unique park. It's a park that not all other cities are offering, and it would be something that would really center that community. And like we said, the development's happening along Pecan right now. We're seeing a city own some property. We're seeing some development come there. We're excited about what's happening at downtown East. I think all this kind of folds into a bigger discussion at some level.
My concern, well, another thing too is you could have a birthday party here. You get that's going to have to be programmed. I don't think that happens organically. It's I'm just going to go to my neighborhood park and have my birthday party.
Wait, why? Okay, wait.
No, I'm just saying that. I mean, so there's going to be programming. So it does go along with that regional. So if there's going to be people coming from out, is that what the neighborhood wants? A lot of people coming in and programming and reserving pavilions, and then it may or may not, I don't know how often it would be used in our other pavilions, but if you are planning it for it to be a regional park, is that what everyone in the neighborhood understands it to be, that this is going to be a draw, that we're trying to draw people in?
Talk to me more about, okay, so what's happening at Lake Pflugerville now regarding parties? Are they programming the pavilion and
So-
they're making requests?
So every pavilion in our park system's first come, first serve. Some of them have rentable opportunities.
Okay.
The ones that are on the schedule fees, Lake Pflugerville is one of them. This would probably be one of them as well, just so we could control, have some sort of control over some of the rentals that are going on out there. But if there wasn't a rental on a Saturday out here, the first person that gets there that day does get first come, first serve options.
Well, and frankly, I've seen frequently at Stonehill Park, that's an area that we don't have available for rent, but there
Right.
are frequently people hosting birthday
Yeah.
parties and whatnot there.
Yeah, we have a lot
next
of
to the
birthday
splash
parties.
pad, especially in the summer.
We that's what I was
I've
gonna
never
say.
seen it.
We see, oh yeah, it's not,
Free.
It's not when I go.
Oh, I see him. I see him camp out
I've never
at
seen a
7
party
a.m.
there. I
sometimes.
never have.
Oh, so okay,
I'm just saying, I just haven't.
So we did that when we were there. We lived there. We went over there, and that was the first inception. We literally had a birthday party out there. That was even before the basketball hoops and the sweet soccer goals. Soccer goals. They're out there with it as well.
Yeah, no soccer here, sorry.
That's right.
Oh, they'll pop up.
It's a practice field right there.
So do you think you have enough feedback at
Yes,
this
sir.
point to
Yes, sir.
go back to planning, zoning, parks and rec, and the design team has some hints about what it could be even better, you know?
We'll bring it back to you in a month
Okay.
or so.
Sounds good.
Good.
Thank
y'all.
you very much.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Good innovation.
Having no other items on the agenda, we were on the work session. We are adjourned, and we'll come back in about 8 minutes.
Ooh, we got